Thank you all for coming. I hope you're all excited to rev up the full potential of your institution with this first event in the Gray Accelerator series, featuring webinars and appearances on the Grow, Grow, Grow podcast. We're going to start off by sharing this month's higher education data trends, and then we're going to switch over to an exciting discussion on accelerating graduation rates through student-centered scheduling. Our presenter today will be Bob Atkins, Gray's CEO, program evaluation expert, and best-selling higher education author. He will be joined by Dr. Susan English from Astra and Dr. Laura Boyer of Northeast Lakeview College. They will share their experiences with growth and some practical advice for you all. A few housekeeping items to get started with. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a place labeled Q&A. Please feel free to add your questions there. We will get to as many as we can during the session, and we can certainly follow up later with you if we run out of time. You can also chat with the presenters in the chat area. You will receive a link to the webinar recording and presentation slides after the session. Please look for it in your email. And now, without further ado, I will turn things over to Bob.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I appreciate it. And I'm delighted to be here today with all of you and want to thank you for taking your time to be with us. I have some wonderful guests with me today. And let me give them a chance to introduce themselves. Laura.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Laura Boyer. I have the honor of serving as the Vice President for Academic Success at Northeast Lakeview College, which is one of the Alamo colleges here in the San Antonio area.
And Susan.
Good afternoon. I have the pleasure of working with the folks at Astra, and we are a scheduling technology, and I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you very much. And without further ado, we'll get started. But one of the things I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of is the reason I invited folks is we're doing research on growth in higher education, which has been a real struggle for many colleges. We're oftentimes going in the wrong direction. And one of the things that surprised me in talking with that Astra and Laura is that they've actually used the schedule to increase credit hours, to increase revenue, and effectively to increase enrollment as well. So I found that really interesting that something that I would think of as more an internal operational thing has such a direct impact on student enrollment, retention, and ultimately growth for the university. So, as always, take a moment to introduce Gray. Some of you may not be very familiar with us. We are the providers of a complete program evaluation system. And you might well ask yourself, what the devil's a program evaluation system? Well, it has a few parts. First of all, it's more than software. It's data, software, and facilitated processes. The data starts with market data on student demand, employment, competition, appropriate degree level for a program. 4 key elements of markets. I'm going to highlight there. Oftentimes people think that what they really need to know about is labor markets. And frankly, labor markets are important, but they're just one element of understanding your market. And market is only one element of really having the data you need to evaluate your portfolio. Other things that are important include margins of program economics, not because you need to make money in every program, but you need some large programs to subsidize smaller ones that may not be able to stand on your own 2 feet, and also to kick money over to your mission to support other activities that may be important to the institution and its mission. And of course, we shouldn't overlook academic standards. That may be pass rates on the NCLEX exam. It may be graduation rates, retention rates year to year, but there are a variety of academic standards you'll want to keep track of that should influence your point of view on the health of the overall program. But I will tell you, unfortunately, that there is no AI algorithm to tell you what programs to offer. I don't think there will be, at least for another couple months, while the AI guys work on this stuff, but there's no telling what they'll have in the year. But it still takes people, it still takes a good process, and it takes judgment to make good program decisions. What I think is sometimes missing is a complete set of data. And that's really what we try and provide to people so that they can make better informed decisions. So let's dive into the monthly data. And we'll start with leading indicators, in this case, Google search volume. We use Google search because it's not only current, but it's actually forward-looking. That is, the people are searching for a given academic program or school are not looking for right now. They're looking for something they're going to enroll in, at some point in the future. That might be a month, it might be a year. So it's a little bit of a forward-looking indicator to tell you where the world is headed. And fortunately, these days it's up. So that's very exciting. It's been down. As all of us have been through, certainly enrollment hasn't been exciting in the last few really years. And we're starting to see some signs that might be turning around. What are people looking for? Heavy influence of career and technical education, CTE. You can see 6 of the programs here are CTE programs: cosmetology, commercial truck and bus driver, nail specialist, HVAC, maintenance tech, electrician, and auto mechanics tech. Healthcare is a little thin here. I was surprised. Medical billing and coding, medical clinical assistant, and EMT paramedic. Normally, I would expect healthcare to have a couple more slots in the top. In particular, nursing is notably absent. And finally, we have one other: legal assistant, paralegal. In terms of what's growing, healthcare did a much better showing. We've got 4 healthcare programs that are amongst the fastest growing programs in terms of Google search volume. So these are things you would expect to see growing in your funnel, looking out to next semester, perhaps the semester after that. Sterile processing tech leads with 79% growth. We have MRI tech, 29% growth, occupational therapy assistant up 25%, and rad tech, or radiation therapy, up 18%. Then we have career and technical fields, and I recognize some of these definitions are a little soft. So if we've miscategorized something from your perspective, I apologize. You take radiation therapy, you could argue as a career and technical education program, but it's also a healthcare program. So I tended to put those in more specific categories when I could. We've got a couple of others here: legal assistant, paralegal, and child development, up 14%. Now, let's take a look at competition, because with size and growth typically comes a lot of competition. I don't think this is surprising, but worth keeping in mind. Cybersecurity, #1 in terms of competitive intensity. A whole lot of people are offering it. Second, it is possible to teach it online, so that brings in the enormous online players who spend literally hundreds of millions of dollars each recruiting students, and this has been a hot program for them. So they're well into this market and driving up the cost of a click on Google. Now, let me see. We've got, in terms of healthcare, medical billing and coding, very high, also potentially online. Medical clinical assistant, a very large program, often at for-profit colleges, but elsewhere as well. Quite competitive. And physical fitness technician, also very high. This, I should tell you, competitive intensity is on a 0 to 1 scale. It's a number Google provides. 1 is the most competitive you can be, 0 is the least competitive. So these scores up in the 9s are really very, very competitive programs. We've got a couple here in career and technical education, data entry, bookkeeping, and then a rack of other. We've got computer programming, legal assistant, paralegal, logistics, and operations management. So it's an interesting list, because on the one hand, you can look at things that are growing, but actually, if you want to know what people are investing in right now, it's the ones that are most competitive. And I think it's difficult to know exactly whether that's a plus or minus. I've often found that the most competitive programs actually tend to have the highest enrollment, and often enrollment growth as well. I think all the competition and advertising and so forth helps stimulate overall demand. So you do have to be good at marketing and admissions to win in these spaces, but just because it's highly competitive doesn't mean it's unattractive. It might be just the opposite. So let's look at recent trends in enrollment. So what we see now are leading indicators. Enrollment is more or less a current indicator, a little bit trailing. The most recent data is for fall spring 2022-23. And you can see we all lived through this, down very significantly, 19 to 20, again 2021. Little bit of an uptick as we came out of COVID, And we've got another uptick as well. This is at the certificate level. So we're starting to see a little bit of life there for certs. Not a pretty picture for new enrollment in associate programs. It continued to decline into 21-22, and now we're seeing a little uptick, up 2%. So hopefully at least the decline is over, but it is too soon to tell, frankly. What's hot? So what had the highest new enrollment at the certificate level? Dominated by career and technical education here with 5 programs: welding, auto mechanic, HVAC, cosmetology, and electrician. Healthcare held its own: medical clinical assistant, nursing patient assistant, aide, licensed practical vocational nurse, and EMT paramedic. One thing to keep in mind when we look at enrollment, especially for these healthcare programs, which is 4 of our top 10, some of these programs are often capped. So licensed practical vocational nurse may well be a program that's capped by the local regulator. So could they have enrolled more people? Possibly, but the regulator said no. So keep that in mind. Most of the rest of these, they'll generally be able to add seats if there's demand. I glossed over career and technical ed, which does very well in terms of enrollment. Welding tech, big area, auto tech, HVAC, cosmetology, and electrician, all in our top 10 in terms of total enrollment, fall spring 2022-23. Now, when we look at the certificate level, we get a very different group of things. We get a lot of other and information technology, computer science, don't neatly categorize, so I put them in other. Dental assisting, I should have put in healthcare, my apologies. And childhood education, I've left in other, because we haven't seen a lot of education, so I didn't create a separate category for that. And then fastest growing new enrollment, we have healthcare with only 1 entry, which I found interesting, and that's for healthcare medical records tech. And then we do have 3 or 4 CTE programs: commercial truck and bus driver, auto mechanics, welding tech, and cosmetology. And there at the bottom is HVAC. When it's growing this slowly, it's interesting. By the time you get to the 10th program, we're already into ones that are starting to decline, which makes it very important that you're emphasizing or adding these programs that are growing, because there are not a lot of them, and being positioned in the right ones is really important, assuming that you have the capacity to teach them. Now, at the associate level, what's highest here? And I find it interesting just how different the lists are. Business, 3 of the top 10. Business management, I put computer science in this category, and bookkeeping. We have 2 science programs that made the top 10, biology and physical sciences. And then we have some healthcare, but not very much. Registered nursing, big program, but still only 2 healthcare programs that made our top 10. And then we have 3 others, psychology, which you could argue is a healthcare program, perhaps mental health, engineering, and criminal justice. So these are the highest enrolling programs in fall spring 2022. And this top 2 is pretty consistent, generally with business and nursing. Psych is usually in that top 3 or 4. I'm a little surprised to see such a strong showing by the sciences. And I think part of what we're seeing here is pre-meds doing their general education training in biology. Now, what's growing? Natural sciences. I've not seen this before, but at the associates level, we've got an 8% increase in number of people enrolled in natural sciences. Perhaps all the issues around climate change are focusing students' attention in this area. Then we have some business programs that grew. Real estate up 7%, computer science up 2%, marketing up 2%, building and construction site management up 1%. Healthcare, kind of a distant third here. Only 2 programs made the list. Diagnostic medical sonography, great program, leads to great careers and earnings, up 4%. Kinesiology, exercise science, up 1%. So those, and we got a few others here. Visual performing arts up 3%. History, my personal favorite, I'm a history major, up 3%. God knows who those people are brave enough to take history these days when everybody's telling them that it doesn't lead to a job, which, by the way, we'll come to a little bit later, is not true. Some of us do actually get employed, amazingly enough, and do well in life. And finally, psychology, just above zero there, 0.4%. Now, let's switch over. What we've been talking about are courses that are taught typically with a degree at the end by traditional universities. Now we're going to pivot because many of you are interested in what you can do in the certificate space, less than degrees. And this would be not just for the classic CTE certificate taught, but potentially certificates for people with a bachelor's degree or higher, but in a particular skill that they might want to learn. So we're looking at Coursera data. Coursera is kind enough to count up how many people enroll in its programs and let us all know. And then we keep track of that month over month and year over year to see how it's changed, to see what's going on with them. Highest two-year growth, foundations of data everywhere, 1.7 million students enrolled in this program. So I think many of us thought that the MOOCs, the massively online open courses, had kind of gone away. I remember we all read in the papers how it was going to take over the world 10 years ago, and it sort of didn't. Well, it actually sort of did. These are massive. It's just that they're invisible to most of us most of the time, and they've fallen out of the press. But this is one course with 1.7 million people who have enrolled in it. Now, keep in mind that since the inception of the course, Science of Wellbeing, 1.1 million people there. Foundations of User Experience, UX Design, 838,000. And let me just do these. Let's do data and tech together. Tech support fundamentals, crash course on Python, process data from dirty to clean, JavaScript. These are all fairly fundamental data analysis tools and capabilities. And then we have just a variety of different things. I mentioned Science of Wellbeing, learning how to learn, introduction to psychology, and starting a successful project. So data and tech still dominates the MOOCs. If we were looking at any of the others, you tend to see much higher actually share of data and tech courses in there, and not as much qualitative psychology and kind of Science of Wellbeing. Coursera's a little bit more balanced as far as that's concerned, but Udemy would be very skewed towards tech. Now, there are other things you can glean by trolling Coursera. One of them is what skills people are interested in learning. And here you can see the particular skills that are taught in project management. As I mentioned on the site, you can see how many people have taken that particular course. And then it's interesting to look at how this aligns very, very closely with the skills that we find in project management jobs. So they've done a good job here of making sure that what they teach is well aligned with what the job market requires. Undoubtedly, because Google's hiring these people, so it knows precisely what they need. Now let's switch over to the other side of the equation and look at what is going on in the employment world. As we do that, I want you all to keep in mind, there is a very widespread mythology out there, and it's often not visible to the users of employment data. And that's this thing called a crosswalk, and in particular, a direct prep crosswalk. So what do I mean by crosswalk? Well, somehow you have to align academic programs on one side with occupations on the other. And they don't come in the same codes. We've got zip codes on one side and SOC codes on the other. And they don't actually align very neatly. So you have to do something to get these two things to line up. Well, what happened was the National Center for Education Statistics published a crosswalk that says, if I study this, then I'm directly prepared to go into this field. And that works in a handful of fields, like nursing. 82%, I think, of people who study nursing end up going into nursing. And some of them don't pass the NCLEX, which explains some of the gap. But nursing students want to become nurses. That is almost the only field in which that's true. If you look at this chart, this 2% I mentioned is one of those two programs is nursing. But 78% of programs, fewer than 19% of the graduates will go into fields for which they're directly prepared. So 80% of the students are going to go do something else. This is hugely important, I think, for two reasons. One, if your labor market data doesn't reflect that, then you're getting an incorrect perception of the jobs that are out there for your graduates and the skills that they may need. Second reason that it's important is about to slip my mind. But when you're designing your program, when you're thinking about what you need to teach your students, remember it goes beyond what they may need in the job that you think they're going to go do. Even in auto tech, 51% of the graduates can end up in something else within 4 years. And when I say something else, I mean something utterly unrelated to auto tech. I went through those individually myself, and the fields that we excluded were really not auto tech. They were insurance adjuster and things like that. So when you keep that in mind, it's very important that they're prepared not just for that first job or the job we think they should do, but for the jobs they're likely to really get. Now, let me give you an example here. Let's just look at psychology. Here are the 6 jobs that the National Center for Education Statistics suggests that people are prepared to do when they graduate. And you can see a lot of psychology here. Remember that if they're graduating from undergrad, they're actually not able to do most of those psychology jobs, which require a master's degree or a doctorate. But it's also a very bounded set of things. And when we look at what people really do, and we have 2 sources for this that both suggest it's very diverse. One is the census, and there's a sample of the census where they ask people what their career was, what their undergraduate major is, and how much money they're making in the American Community Survey. And we find people going into hundreds of fields, not 5 or 6, when they've got a degree like psychology. Here's a different source. This is a data set we just acquired that keeps track of 70 million people, what they majored in, and the career jobs that they've held over their career. And here you can see this is just a very, very tip top of the list, just dozens of areas they go into. In fact, overall, it's hundreds that they go into, and all sorts of things besides psychology. And you can see one of the leaders here is chief executives. That's probably a little bit of an overstatement in terms of what you think of the chief executive. I always would think of that as sort of a Fortune 500 company chief executive. This includes small business owners as well. So even I count as a chief executive in this cut. But you can see all the different things that go into online merchandising, HR, customer service, general and operations manager, brownfield redevelopment, and again, this list goes on for hundreds of other occupations. So keep that in mind. People don't do what they're supposed to do. And so when you're counting up jobs for psych graduates, it'll often seem, depending on the labor source you go to, as though they're very, very few, when in fact, there are lots of different things they can go do. What's happening overall with jobs? I think all of us are going to keep track of this in the newspapers. Year over year, it's down quite a bit. But last year was still a recovery year from COVID. And we're sort of returning to 2019 pre-COVID levels. And you can see recently, job posting volumes have been pretty flat in the US. So I think the Federal Reserve was hoping they'd drop, and that would in turn reduce the upward pressure on inflation. In fact, they've been pretty steady, which is good news for your graduates. But I'm sorry, it is down 19% year over year. Again, that's versus a somewhat inflated prior year. What's the good news? Lots of jobs for managers, which is a good outcome for our graduates. Retail sales, not such a great outcome since it doesn't really require a college degree. Going down the business side, which dominates the list, we've got secretaries, customer service reps, user support specialists, maintenance repair workers, and wholesale sales reps. And then we have 3 healthcare, nursing, home health aides, and nursing assistants. And these have been very persistently in the top. As all of you, I'm sure, know, we've had a shortage of nurses forever. So I don't see this job posting volume for nurses going down anytime soon. Last time I checked, there were about 5 job postings for every nursing graduate. What's growing in job postings? Well, you can imagine if the overall is down, not very much is growing here. 4 or 5 business programs are up. Payroll clerks, tax preparers, for example. Healthcare, we've got 2, physical therapy assistants and psychiatric technicians. We have a handful of other things. We've got some criminology related ones, police, science, and correctional officers, jailers. And I didn't know what to do with veterinary. I didn't know if to put that in healthcare, but I figured we'd stick to human health for healthcare. So I put that in other as well. But these are the areas that are growing fastest from an employment standpoint, keeping in mind that with employment down 19%, not much is growing. What skills do people ask for? First and foremost is Microsoft Office. This cuts, I put it in business, but this cuts across everything. Nurses need to know Microsoft Office. It's one of the top skills for them as well. Marketing, construction, accounting, billing, project management, healthcare, merchandising, and data entry. Where are the certificates? It's in healthcare. Thank God they do require that people pass tests and get certificates before they provide healthcare to us. I think that's probably a good idea when we all go in to get our healthcare. Those folks actually know what they're doing. They've been tested. You don't see a lot of other stuff getting certified. Predominantly, the next main one is security clearances of various types. Now let's take a look at a couple numbers, and I'll introduce my colleagues. What we see when we look at the data, we do program economics for over 40 institutions now. And when you look at the number of unique sections that they offer, it's been usually flattish, maybe it's come down a tiny bit. But when we look at student credit hours and students, they've been dropping much more rapidly. So in effect, we're offering the same number of sections to a declining number of students. So that's going to leave excess capacity. And that's going to essentially cost you money. Let me give you a quick example of an analysis that we do where we actually go in by course section and we count up the number of students in those sections, the number of credit hours, and the number of sections, of course. Now, doing the math quickly here, you divide 5 into 28. We've got 5 and change students in each of those sections. Now, I'm not exactly sure what dead ed is, but I'm pretty sure almost nothing should have 5 students in a section. And so how far is that over threshold for comparable courses taught elsewhere? That's costing the school $169,000 in effectively the inefficient administration of that particular set of courses. Now, that's as far as Gray can go with that analysis. To fix that, you actually have to look at the course schedule and begin to look at why we're offering 5, which may have to do with day parts, and look at whether we can consolidate those. If so, what modalities, what times a day are we going to consolidate into, which faculty members are going to get those. So you end up having to look at your schedule in order to achieve these efficiencies. So that's our next topic, and I'm going to hand it off to our speakers. Laura, I think you're picking it up here, right?
I'll be picking it up. Yep.
Oh,
Great.
yes.
I'll advance the charts for you.
Okay. That'll be fine.
If you want to, you want me to give you the screen?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Susan English. We spoke earlier, and I'm delighted to have Dr. Laura Boyer with me today, Vice President of Academic Success from Northeast Lakeview, and she's going to be sharing some of the amazing work that's occurring on her campus. Go ahead, Bob, and just move that along for us. But first of all, just to share quickly, Astra's mission, as Bob alluded to, we're all about the course schedule and into planning, but our mission is quite simple: helping institutions graduate more students. And so Bob's been talking a lot about enrollment, but I would add to this that we are talking enrollment plus completion, right? So for over 26 years, Astra has empowered colleges and universities to be more effective. That means getting students to and through their programs, but also doing that work efficiently with course scheduling and planning. To be effective, data-informed decisions are removing barriers to have students be able to complete, and efficiency is demonstrated with financial sustainability. Ad Astra does this with a technology platform, but also consulting services as well. Thanks, Bob. Our partners in this work reach outcomes across these 4 pillars that you're looking at. Together, we focus on building an effective course schedule, one that maximizes student success across many domains, including retention, credential attainment, and time to completion. Astra and our partners work together to assure developing and delivering an academic course schedule in the most efficient manner, thus allowing the institution to secure resources, both financial and personnel, faculty, and staff, to invest in program growth and ultimately increase tuition yield. Operation efficiency is so key today, right? Time is money. Our partners are able to streamline processes and, equally important, necessary collaborations to ensure the development of an optimal data-informed course schedule. And then circling back to student success, but with a lens toward equitable outcomes, we support our partners through disaggregated data, target interventions, all leading to diminished equity gaps. Thanks, Bob. So today we are delighted to partner with Northeast Lakeview and Dr. Boyer, Vice President of Academic Success, In the context of the history of community colleges across the country, Northeast Lakeview is actually quite young. So Laura, let's start by just having you tell us a little bit about your institution.
Yes, I'd be happy to. And as I mentioned earlier, Northeast Lakeview College is one of the 5 Alamo colleges in the Alamo College District, which serves San Antonio and the greater San Antonio area. We started as an off-campus location for St. Philip's College, one of our sister colleges, and then as an off-site location for San Antonio College. And in 2018, Northeast Lakeview College was independently accredited as a separate college. And we are a Hispanic serving institution. This year, we hit our enrollment high of 8,200 students. And our trends have been primarily part-time, approximately 80% this year, 81% this fall. We have a large military and military-connected institution. We're very close to several military bases, and San Antonio is a military-connected city. We also like to talk about some of the accolades that we received. We have been recognized as one of the most promising places to work for the past several years, and we are excited about that and building just that collegial environment as well as that student-centered environment for our students.
Awesome, congratulations. And those demographics are similar to so many of our partners, especially with that part-time demographic. Laura, you oftentimes talk about your cohesive team that you work with and that your team is driven by data-informed decisions. Can you talk about what brought your team and the Astra team together?
Yes, so that actually was the vision of our president, Dr. Veronica Garcia, and she had the vision to use Astra to improve the equity outcomes and the completion outcomes of our students, utilizing the schedule as the base to make that happen. And so she initiated that partnership with Astra. I was able to join the institution right as implementation was taking place for the partnership with Astra. And so we achieve a team or use a team approach to this in the sense that my entire academic leadership team, the deans, the chairs, myself, and our institutional research office, and members of our student success team, when it's valuable, all participate in our Ad Astra partnership. And so we meet monthly with our consultant, Christine, who is outstanding. And we make all of our decisions around not only utilizing Astra and in the building process of building Astra together, we also set all of our goals and targets for the schedule and expectations for the schedule. We have those in discussion and then make those decisions from the data that we have from our schedule in past semesters, as well as the data that Astra is providing for us for future need.
Great, great. We've listed today on the screen just a few of the strategies from the Northeast Strategic Plan. If you can't tell, both Laura and I have drank the juice that the academic course schedule impacts every unit across the college and drives student success as much as any other initiative, strategy at the institution, and therefore is one of the most influential resources or infrastructure at the college. Laura, can you tell us how you see the purposeful work within academic schedule how it enhances the outcomes of your strategic plan.
Sure. So as we've been working with the schedule, it's with that fundamental understanding that an appropriate and comprehensive schedule that meets the student's need is what drives completion of courses, persistence from semester to semester, and then ultimately completion of degrees. And so we understand that we have to really utilize this schedule to make the pathways possible for our students to complete and move on to those dreams that they have. And so we have utilized some really, I think, stretch metric for our schedule in order to drive those completions, increase credit hours per student or degree velocity, increase contact hours, increase credit hours, increase headcount enrollment. And we've done that in partnership with our Student Success Division. Because we understand that strategic enrollment management isn't just about headcount, it's also about student course taking behavior and enrollments in sections, filling those sections and maximizing those resources and having that schedule available that allows the students to register and move from semester to semester. So we partner with Student Success. We have close relationships with advising on getting real-time information of what they're experiencing, trying to get students into courses. We have direct relationships with Student Success on getting information of how many students are coming in for orientation. Do they need extra courses? What are those extra courses? So once we've built our original schedule, we are utilizing that expertise also in Student Success to inform how we refine that schedule through the registration period. But the most important part of that is that we do refine that schedule throughout the registration period and are monitoring all of our metrics throughout that in order to continue to refine and maximize our enrollments and the courses that we're offering, the modalities that we're offering them in, the times of day, and all of that. We keep a very close eye on all of those metrics to ensure that we are continually refining that schedule to meet the student needs.
Can you give us an example of refining the schedule?
So an example of refining,
8,000 students registering, coming at you. You actually change the schedule?
Yes, we do. We change the schedule, we add, we remove, we combine. So we build our initial schedule using our enrollment and contact hour targets. We use Astra to help us to identify number of seats potentially needed, types of courses, where our modalities are needed, times of day, and all of that to inform that initial schedule build. But as registration is occurring, we're utilizing Astra and our daily enrollment reports to track the patterns of that registration. So the fill rates, are they consistent? What's the prior fall? Are they not consistent with the prior fall? Are we seeing faster registrations in certain courses, slower registration in certain courses? Are things not filling or filling too quickly? And we use that information to do things like combined sections where we're having lower enrollment registration patterns, to add additional sections where we're seeing that those courses are filling up quickly and we're not going to meet the need if we don't add. We change modalities sometimes on sections that don't have enrollment because we see that we need more online or we need more in person for a particular course. We're making those kind of changes throughout the registration period. Certainly we do that in a way that has the least impact on students so that we're not sending students into the whirlwind having to change their schedule. So we focus on those courses that either are low enrolled or have zero enrollment, and then we make those refinements to those courses so that we don't negatively impact students who are already registered.
I can't believe you can pull that off in real time. I can only imagine what would happen if we tried to reshuffle our staffing at that scale.
Our faculty are, they're used to this. They understand the needs of our students. And so they understand that their schedule is going to change throughout the registration period. And so we really appreciate our faculty members, student-centered approach and understanding around that.
A quick question too. I think we have time. Could you make that kind of dynamic change before you had at Astra?
Not as easily. We didn't have as good line of sight on the schedule and the patterns and whether or not they were comparable to prior year or not. And because we didn't have the data capability to produce those comparisons. And so it was basically, best guess judgment, looking at Excel sheets, trying to compare. It was very inefficient to try and make those decisions. So Astra really gives us that real-time day-to-day registration data. It's easily to access, and so we can make decisions more quickly.
Thank you.
And so we have some primary metrics that we're seeking for our schedule each semester. And so some of the success of our outcomes that we've had this fall, we have achieved 90% fill rates across the board, of an average fill rate of all of our classes using Astra. This year we had a 15.9% increase in contact hours from one fall to the next. And we've added several new workforce programs since 2019. So that pattern that you mentioned earlier of stable course sectioning and reducing credit hours and students, we're actually seeing the opposite. We've had significant increase in section offerings, significant increase, and we've seen increases in credit hours and average credit hours for our students, and certainly increases in overall enrollment. And that's allowed us to have some flexibility to support and build our new workforce programs.
So here, we're just speaking to our approach with Astra. We're dedicated to meeting our partners where they are today and guiding them toward an enhanced operational intelligence and results for the future. As the client's objectives evolve, we are there to lead them to smarter planning and scheduling for better outcomes. And with our methodology, we aim to deliver exceptional results. Our strategic approach involves defining the vision with the college, aligning all the stakeholders, achieving goals, and measuring impacts. And to be honest, for us, it's not just about the results. I hope folks heard the passion and the story from Laura. It is truly about the journey, and it's about the learning that goes along, and ultimately the positive outcomes for students. And that's why we do what we do.
Terrific. Laura, anything you'd like to add, or we'll open
No, I think you can move on to the next slide if you'd like to. Okay, so I'd like to kind of I think, Susan, do you have some more slides there?
Yeah.
Did I lose something?
Yeah,
I'll stop my show if you want to bring it up.
okay. Let's see if I can't share over here. Here we have, let's see. Can we see mine?
Terrific. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to flick through and give Laura an opportunity to show some of the metrics that she's been using. Laura, is this one coming across?
Yes, it is.
Oh, perfect. Good, good, good.
So the important part of, I think, how we've been successful, again, is to begin with the end in mind and know what we want to achieve with the schedule. So our metrics each semester are 5% contact hour growth, 25 average class size across the schedule, and 90% fill rates, as well as increasing the average credit hour per student. And so we not only track this every day through daily enrollment reports we get from our district, we also have scorecards that we use to measure this in points of time, and to archive our results, and to share our results and be transparent with our data. So we have these scorecards. We're looking at contact hours. We're looking at fill rates compared fall to fall. We're looking at seat count trends, average class size. And so we keep these metrics so that we can hold ourselves accountable to the goals that we've set. And if we don't meet them, we understand where our differences were so that we can improve the next year. Next slide.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, these really speak to what is driving your, how you're maximizing that course schedule. What are your drivers?
So our drivers really are maximizing our resources while increasing access for our students, because we know that increased access increases completion. And so we are a growing institution, and with funding, when you're rapidly growing, the funding does generally not grow as quickly as you are growing as an institution. And so it's been exceptionally important that we maximize our financial resources, but also now, even more importantly, that we are maximizing utilizing our outstanding faculty resources, because we are experiencing shortages of adjuncts in certain high enrolled areas like English and math. We live in an area with multiple institutions. There's a lot of competition for those adjuncts. And so we can actually run out of faculty in certain areas. And so it's so important that we are ensuring we're giving as much access as possible with the faculty that we have. And also ensuring we have the right schedule, because that's what allows students to complete. And so we've seen, again, increases in contact hours, but what is more exciting to me is that our degree velocity, or our average credit hour per student, took a dip over COVID, and now we've seen that recover and even increase more. And so that we know will then ultimately increase graduation rates and time to degree later on.
And that's Astra's mission as well. So that's super exciting to hear that work getting accomplished.
And this is just an example of another way that we hold ourselves accountable. We can get most of this data from Astra, and then we pull it together with some other data to weekly track within our schedule where we are on certain things. So we're tracking number of sections by modality. We're tracking seats by modality. We're tracking open seats by modality. We're also looking at fill rates and average class size in all of our parts of term in all of our modalities. We're breaking it out now by our transfer courses and our workforce courses. And additionally, which not on this slide, we also look at time of day, so evening and weekend classes. This is how we're tracking this throughout the registration period, so we can see how we're moving towards our metrics. And we can also see where the enrollment patterns are shifting. In addition to what we see in Astra, this also gives us another line of sight to how those fill rates and average class sizes are shifting between modalities and times of day. And that just helps us make, again, better decisions. But we also share this data with our president. And so we're always as transparent as we can be with our president and amongst ourselves, so that we always have line of sight of where we are with the efficiency of the schedule, so we can prepare, be prepared, and again, ensure that we're being as efficient as we can.
And I would add something that I think you do or your president does that's quite unique, that our audience might find interesting, is that shared transparency and accountability across your college units. Do you want to share briefly about that?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to enrollment management and strategic enrollment management, our president and our leadership team have, and again, the vision comes from our president, but the accountability for that strategic enrollment management is actually shared between our student success and our academic success. And the way we do that through the metrics is our student success colleagues, they are tracking their targets for headcount enrollment, and we are tracking our targets for contact hours. And there are other measures in there, average credit hours per student, total credit hours, that we have some shared accountability for, but those two primary metrics are split because we understand one can't happen without the other. I can't increase contact hours without headcount coming in, but headcount won't come in without us having the right schedule. And so it shares that accountability and helps us keep ourselves focused on our responsibility for maximizing that access for students.
Now, as you think about that, one of the things that I have heard is that it's important to try and, how do you align, let me say it differently, how do you align your programs with the particular needs of students? and manipulate your schedule for that purpose. So you can, in effect, appeal to students better.
Yeah, for the actual schedule build process, I'm going to separate scheduling from program development. We utilize Astra and our other daily enrollment registration reports, to build the schedule that we believe has the mix of modalities, times of day, and the number of seats and sections so that our students will be able to get the schedule that they're looking for their programs. We're primarily academic transfer right now, but we are building our workforce programs, and we're building our workforce programs based on the workforce needs in our area on the northeast side of San Antonio. And so we're utilizing workforce data similar to some of the data you presented earlier, and our local partnerships with business and industry and school districts and other regional and local partners to help inform what programs we need to bring on that will meet the needs of the community, but also be programs that students will have interest in taking part in.
Isn't there an issue where you have the classic underserved community, somebody who may be a working mother, doesn't she need a fundamentally different schedule than others?
Yes, and so we have been working with trying to expand our options for the working adults and the students that need courses at what we consider the non-traditional times. And so we actually have been able to use Astra to help inform that, because we were able to see for the students that are enrolling in the evenings, what are the highest enrolled programs, so that we can program more for those students that are actually attending in the evening or on the weekends. And we're also developing more flexible schedules or faster terms for students to be able to move through programs more quickly. We're building programs now that can be completed in 18 months as opposed to the traditional 2 years. And so with the combination of what we can see in Astra and what we're seeing with our student population shifts, we're managing and building different options into our schedule.
How do you identify where you're going to need to add sections in the coming semester? This is a question from the audience.
So where we identify that we're going to need to add sections, so we utilize Astra for that, because it does analyze our historical trends to give us some recommendations of numbers of seats that we'll need per course and in modalities. But we also have been experiencing higher than normal growth rates, and so we're also taking that into consideration. But Astra gives us that course specific, discipline specific recommendations, and that we can then start from there and utilizing the other information we have, build that schedule based on where we can see the growth is going to happen. And then during the registration period, we use that rate of registration data in Astra that helps us see if those trends are above or below where we would have seen them in prior year. That also indicates that we may need to add sections during the registration period.
Are you able to cut sections using a similar process?
Yes, we can see in the Astra data if our registration rate is also slower than it has been in prior semesters. And we can, as that other data that I also showed with the fill rates and average class size by discipline and so forth, we can also break that down by courses. And so that also helps us to see if certain things are filling slower than we would anticipate or that we would like to see. And then we can use that to help us look at different courses that we might need to combine in order to eliminate some unnecessary sections and move those resources to courses that we have a higher need for. And the great thing about being so efficient and having those really high fill rates is that gives me the flexibility within our financial resources to allow within our workforce programs that are newer and will have lower class sizes, to allow those to run and be able to build momentum in those programs, because we've been so efficient in our other areas. Certainly our fill rate target is a really high one. And we understand that that does also could create some compression or some areas where we don't quite have the ability to offer as much as we would like. But we do that because we know that gives us that opportunity to allow those workforce programs to grow and build momentum over time.
So what you're telling me is that in Texas, you're running a socialist program evolution where small programs get subsidized by bigger programs?
I don't know that subsidize is the right word. It's just we have an overall instructional budget. And so I just want to be able to say when I'm running lower enrolled courses because I want to support those workforce programs, I want to be confident that I've used my resources efficiently and appropriately when we do that. And so
joking, by the way.
that's
but
what I like to say.
Yeah, no, I think actually that business of having your programs produce, your big established programs produce enough margin to support new programs is actually a vital part of program strategy that I didn't realize was being manifested also in the schedule. So it's very, very important. Otherwise, you can't fund growth.
Correct. And also it's not just workforce programs, that we support that way. We have other special programming options for different populations of students or for other, curricular reasons that we also want to support. And so that allows us to do that. So we have a quality enhancement plan that is a specific course that's new off the ground and, different cohorts for different types of curricular initiatives. It allows us to support all of those that may start out with lower enrollment as they build momentum.
Terrific. Well, any other questions you have, Susan?
No, it's been a good time.
Yeah, I think we're up at the top of the hour. Again, thank all of you for joining us today. Very much appreciate it. I hope you'll join us next month for our subsequent webinar. And for those of you who haven't had some fun and heard about, gotten strategies for growth, please, I hope you'll find my growth, what is it called, a podcast. There are lots of ideas. They're not mine. They come from your peers at schools that have actually found ways to grow. So I hope you can leverage that resource. They're all free and find ways that you can get folks going to college again. Thank you very much.